Hello, my name's Andy Cooper, and welcome to At My Table Southwest, the podcast for folk who love dining out and want to learn the secrets of the best in the business. Each episode will be shining the spotlight on fabulous things happening in hospitality in the Southwest and talking to talented people from the industry. And we're proudly sponsored by Southwest 660, the iconic road trip stretching from Poole in Dorset to Watchet in Somerset. And I'm delighted that at my table this episode is Sam Pounds, chef proprietor of the local hospitality legend Harry's restaurant in Exeter. Really looking forward to catching up with Sam and hearing what she has to say about her role in the success of Harry's. Hi Sam, and thanks so much for joining me. It's great that you could spare the time from what I'm sure is a very busy time with the business day in, day out to spend some time talking to me about hospitality and, as I said in my intro, the local legend that is Harry's. Perhaps on that subject, perhaps you could talk to me a little bit about the history of what is something of a culinary and hospitality institution in not only Exeter but beyond.
Hi Andy, thank you for having me. The history. Well, 32 years ago, I think in November.
Wow.
We were busy running a pizza restaurant on Queen Street in Exeter, so it wasn't new to us, but that was a franchise. And then my parents and I decided to move, and this building came up and everyone says, "You're crazy, there's no restaurants outside of town." Maybe it's not so crazy, not such a bad idea after all. And of course, the university was right there. It was a beautiful building. Such a beautiful building. So we opened up and we sort of ran it very much as an extension. I'm from a very large family. I'm the eldest of 7, very much as an extension of like the family dinner table. And that's kind of how it's always been. We love having people around and we love a party. So it's a good excuse to always be having a party, if you like.
I think that comes through whenever you go to Harry's. The ethos seems to be food, fun, hospitality, having a great time. And that comes across certainly whenever I've visited you, and it has become something of an institution, but it's not easy, is it? I mean, to sustain a hospitality business for 32 years takes a lot of graft, a lot of skill. Tell us about how you feel the business has managed to sustain its reputation and its longevity.
I mean, maybe I'm just bloody minded, but
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. I think it certainly takes being a bit bloody minded. I think it's having the ability to be agile as well and not being too wedded to one idea. And I think, again, it comes back to the idea, we really like hosting and having a good party and we like people to have a good time. And how people have that time or how they have it will be on their terms. And so you don't want to be too dictatorial about it or too pedantic. So our ethos, if we have one, has been to give them what they want. And, in 30 years that has changed. So if we were still serving the same menu as we served 30 years ago, dare I say it, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. So we've been able to listen to what our customer, consumer, whatever you want to call it, what they want, give it to them. I hope that's what we do. I think we do, because that's why we're still there, surely. And we love doing it too. So
yeah, I think that passion comes across. You're talking here, and when I asked you, my cheat sheet is to ask all my guests to fill in a little questionnaire before the podcast, because it gives us an opportunity to do some revision on my side and learn a little bit more about them. And yeah, that came through in your notes. You describe yourself as chef, proprietor, owner, and everything in between, which
Exactly.
you are very hands-on, aren't you? If you go into Harry's, I suspect 99 times out of 100 you'll be there, sleeves rolled up, in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly that. And if I'm not, I'm passing through, I've gone to the shops and doing this, and people say, "Are you working tomorrow?" And I say, "No, I'm not working, but I'll be in," and they'll say, "Oh, I'll see you tomorrow." It's my life. I lived like barely a quarter of a mile away from it, and I've never lived further than that from it, and so I can't imagine not having it, and it's sort of, yeah, I'm always there, and it's not a job, it's an extension. I've had it longer than I've had homes. So it is my
Yes.
second home, and I love being there, and I love people coming there. I love the building, and I love the location, and I love Pennsylvania, I love Exeter. So it's the whole thing as it grows outwards. I love the university. I love the university students. I absolutely adore that some people come back and say, "Oh my God, it hasn't changed in 30 years." And you think, "Do you know how hard I've worked to change it?" There's so much change gone on, but at the same time, they don't feel it's changed. So
And I think and testament to that is I was sat at, believe it or not, at a dinner in Kensington just before Christmas, and a chap mentioned to me that his daughter was at Exeter University, and I said to him, I'm hoping, and he goes, I know what you're going to say, that we should dine out at Harry's. He said, we go there every time we come down from London. And I think that uni link, while not sort of over egging it in terms of its influence, it is quite a big part of the party, the celebration. You do feel when you go in there, there's that massive link with the university, isn't there?
it is, and I think Exeter's really lucky to have the university. I think it's one of the things that love or hate the students, and that they bring they bring such a great vibe to it, and they bring youth to the city, and they keep it alive. And I just think it's not the be all and end all, but it's a great link up, and they just bring such a great energy. They bring a London vibe. They bring, and keeps life interesting.
And talk us through the taking over of it as the boss 15 years ago, because clearly family business,
Yeah.
you were part of the firmament, I suppose, for the first 17 years. But what led to you actually becoming head honch?
Um, well, yeah, and with seven brothers and sisters, I had a lot to fight off. So, luckily, I was the eldest. I got almost first dibs there. But I think mum and dad. My dad he passed away last year, which is sad because Simon was a legend there. Um, my dad, again, he loves a party, but he loves a project even more, and he's a great builder, and he was really responsible for the the first Harry's iteration, if you like, the terracotta walls and all the wood panelling and stuff, and the stained glass, which I managed to keep going, but in a slightly different way. And so he was very much loved that. But he said to me when he decided it was time to hang up, his Basil Fawlty apron, he said, Sam, he said, I just haven't got it in me. He said, I don't know how you do it every day. He said, he said, I like the party, I like all that. He said, but I just can't do all the housekeeping. And essentially, running a restaurant is an awful lot of housekeeping to get to the party. But fortunately, you always get to the party, so the housekeeping's worth it.
Yeah, and did you feel daunted when you took it over?
Yes, very, because I had all my siblings working with me, or at least half of them working with me, and my dad, who was quite a figure. Like, people knew him, and it was just like people came to see Simon and down a tequila with him, and I thought, how am I going to do that? How am I going to be at the party all by myself? And so it was a tough first 10 years, I'd say. I found it really hard on my own. I had a young family as well, so I was growing my team, and they were literally like 10, 7, and very young. But they all grew into it, so it's got a lot easier. But yeah, it was tough that first 10 years on my own. But I was lucky. I always managed to find people who wanted to be a part of it. So Simon's legacy sort of helped me. I had already created this kind of vibe, if you like, where this is a fun place to be, and so I just had to keep enough of that going.
And can we talk about staff and team members? Because I think one of the things that I notice when I come into Harry's, you see yourself excluded. You do see the same faces serving at table and over a period of time. And it's clear to me that unlike some other places you go where you don't recognise the staff, or there's one or two maybe, your staff retention must be very good. And what do you put that down to?
Again, I think lucky being an independent, because you can make your own decisions, and again, you can be agile about it. You can say, "Oh, this isn't working out." It might be the law, it might be what other places do, but this isn't working out for them. So I've been able to do my own thing to look after people. Again, the first 10 years a lot tougher. I found it really hard, and because I'm hard on myself, I perhaps was a bit of a taskmaster. I'm learning to be a bit more relaxed and give myself some time off, which means my staff get time off, which is something that's changed more recently, I think. Why do they stay? I think they like it. I think they like being a part of it. And I think I was always told, there are three ways to get people to work for you. You can pay them lots of money. I mean, I do pay them, obviously. Pay them, coerce them, or you can make them want to be part of the team and love what you do. And I hope and think that most people just love being a part of it, so that's why they stay. And I've been fortunate. Again, the university is good for that because you get some really good people come down and then they stay with you for the whole 3 years, off and on. So there's that continuity of people. Then I have youngsters who start out with me at 16 and stay and then go away to uni but come back on holiday. So some people work for me for as long as 5 or 6 years, even in a part-time capacity. And then my general manager, Amy, who, let's face it, she's turning into an institution in her own right, has been with me for over 10 years. So she's had a break, gone back to Australia, and I think it's allowing people to have that break as well, and let them do their thing. Helps. Yeah, I think it's just they like being a part of that team, and I think that's the best way, and we have a lot of fun.
But that isn't easy, is it? I guess it's some of it's intuitive, I'm sure, but you have to work hard at fostering a team atmosphere, particularly at times when the business can be quite acute.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a small team as well, so it can get claustrophobic, and then there's times when you need to pull a lot of people in. So yeah, it takes a lot of management, and also being a family business for people coming into it, it has its limitations. You are running a family business, anyone with family businesses. If you've got 4 children and then you've got strong team members, for them, there's always that sort of play off against, well, where do I fit amongst, it's a lot to manage, but we do, and, we've managed it sometimes better than other times, but it balances out well. So we have to all like each other. I always say that, and it also has to work with our life. And if you're lucky, you find somebody who thinks, this is what I want out of it, and this is enough for me, or I want more. Amy's managed to make it a huge part of her life and loves it, and she's part of the family to us. She's been there so long. She comes for Christmas. Yeah, we've been lucky, but yes, you're right. It's hard work fostering it, but we balance it all out, I think.
We'll pick up with Sam later, but first, and some breaking news for the podcast this time around, with the news that a very, very familiar face is returning to the West Country. Many folks will probably remember Anton Petrovsky, the former MasterChef winner from his time on TV, but down in the southwest, we'll also remember him for running the Michelin-starred Treby Arms, which was really something of a fabulous dining experience a few years back when Anton was the head chef there. It was a marvellous restaurant, which was an experience in itself when you went there, and I think the West missed him when he disappeared, and he ended up going up to Liverpool, running his own restaurant up there. I actually bothered to go up to Liverpool and seek it out because I was such a fan of his chefing down here in the West. He ran a place called Roski up in Liverpool and got a Michelin star there as well. So the man is clearly a talent, and now we've got him back. I'm chuffed to learn this week that he's joining the Rising Sun Hotel and Restaurant in Lynmouth in North Devon. Lovely place, Lynmouth. I mean, it's just a fabulous seaside village, beautifully atmospheric, and has got some great places to stay and get out and about on the southwest coast path from Lynmouth. And to have Anton joining the Rising Sun as head chef imminently is just fabulous news for the West, and I can already feel myself lingering over the keyboard ready to make a booking because he's bringing such talent back to the West. It'll be an absolute delight to see him back behind a kitchen in our neck of the woods. So welcome back, Anton, and we will look forward to seeing you perform your kitchen wonders once again. And now for this episode, our recommendation for a table for 2 in the southwest, where we highlight for you somewhere where you might like to try and dine out that we've already sampled on your behalf. And this episode, I'm very, very pleased to recommend to you Ardor, a Mediterranean restaurant in the charming Cornish town of St Ives. Something of a magnet, St Ives, anyway, for tourists, and I can only imagine that Ardor is going to add the foodies to that list if they weren't on it already, because it's such a brilliant restaurant. Been open just about a year now, I think, or maybe just under a year, but run by the chef patron Dorian Jamat, who many of us knew during his time at the Idle Rocks, the St Maurs across the peninsula in Cornwall, doing a fantastic job there. I mean, Dorian has a fantastic backdrop anyway. He was head chef at Le Manoir with Raymond Blanc for a number of years, which tells you all you need to know about his credentials. But at Ardor, he really is, as they say, knocking it out of the park. It's an amazing restaurant, beautiful rooms, really nicely done. Nothing's been spared in terms of the look and the feel of the place. Staff are first class. The time we dined there, the welcome was amazing. They were very attentive, which of course we know in hospitality isn't sometimes the case, but they don't really have any issues with that at Ardor. But the chefing and the cooking is out of this world, beautifully done dishes, hot and cold dishes, hot and cold meats, beautiful Mediterranean inspired cooking. It would be doing a disservice just to call it tapas. It's tapas plus, to be frank. So if you get the opportunity, it's tucked away on the lovely cobbled Fore Street, which is a bit of a sort of tourist drag in the main. Lots of shops and clothing places along there, but you can't miss it. It's sort of 2 minutes walk from the seafront there in St Ives, and well worth taking in if you're in the area. And if you want to stay in the area, we always like to recommend somewhere nearby to our Table for Two venue, which might be a good place to stay. I'd thoroughly recommend the Carbis Bay estate. Many of you will know it because it hosted the G7 summit in 2021 when the world leaders landed in that part of Cornwall. It has something of a reputation for being pricey, and I don't deny on occasions some of their extra special rooms might be a bit budget stretching for folks, and I understand that. But the beautiful thing about the Carbis Bay estate is the options it has. There's self-catering options. You can stay in the main hotel, pick a time of year when it's slightly off season, and you'll get yourself a good deal. And it's such a beautiful resort, Carbis Bay. Not known to many. It's sort of a bit of a off the beaten track resort in Cornwall, if you like, getting ever popular as the Carbis Bay takes off. But yeah, amazing stretch of sands. And my real recommendation, if you link Ardor and the Carbis Bay estate, is to travel by train. There's an amazing little branch line, a little bit Ivor The Engine for those of us who remember that going way back. You can catch the train from Carbis Bay, pootle down into St Ives, avoid all the traffic, get an iconic view of the resort and the surrounding bay as you go down. Enjoy your time in St Ives itself, make sure you eat at Ardor, and then tootle back to your resort of Carbis Bay later in the day by train again. Fantastic experience and two wonderfully iconic places to experience. So that's our Table for Two and Place to Stay recommendation for this issue. Seek them out if you can. And now let's return and chat to Sam.
I think as well, COVID was such a, you can't sort of talk about catering or anything really, but catering in particular, I think, because we literally couldn't work from home. It was one of those, lots of people work from home, and I can see that the workplace has changed for lots of people in offices, but for us, we couldn't work at all. And then, of course, that dropped a lot of people out of hospitality who didn't want to be in it anymore. I think for 4 or 5 years it's taken for us to start to come back to it, and people are now starting to want to be back in catering or hospitality. I don't think they wanted to be in it after COVID. I think there was a real kind of pushback against it. And I think we've had to change, as in hospitality's had to change. And I think the hours have gotten a bit shorter. People aren't afraid to close anymore, including myself. I was a 7-day-a-week operation before COVID. We never had a break. We never closed for Christmas break, and we never closed for a summer holiday break. We do all of those things now, and I think that massively helps.
And on the wider topic, that's interesting because I think, that science of how you deal with, hospitality in the modern era, post-COVID, with all the challenges. Hospitality is a big topic at the minute in terms of the challenges the industry faces and economic pressures, and obviously there's the increases in taxes upon hospitality businesses. What's your sort of, if you like, global view of where hospitality sits at the minute?
I think hospitality. I think we're going to have to see what they call the QSR, the quick service restaurant. We've seen massive growth in that. It's going to become as automated as it can, as there'll be no one serving, and I think that'll be hugely popular and do really well. So I think that's a massive growth market. At the same time, I think there's now room for people to enjoy the restaurant experience as it used to be almost 30 years ago, where you get treated like you've gone out for a special night. And I think there was this massive proliferation in the sort of 2000s, early 2000s, of what I call mid-chain spend chain dining, and it ruined the experience. It ruined the experience for a lot of people. You would be paying a lot of money and in and out in an hour and a half, and because of the pressures on these chains, they had to make all those turns. They had to make that kind of money, and I think it gave all of us a bad name. We were all working too many hours. We were all badly paid, and I think this way around, I think it's quite promising. And I know that sounds almost an odd thing to say, but I think if we get it right this time, it could be better. I see us moving a bit more towards the French, perhaps working 35-hour weeks, which means we're not scared to close, that people will come because it is a special occasion and I'll enjoy being hosted. It will be a night out. And then people who want to eat out all the time will go to what I call these sort of quick serve restaurants, which are highly automated, still good food. That they're coming a long way. Some of this, there's nothing wrong with a great slim chickens if that's what you want. And that's just feeding yourself, and that's fine. But a night out at a restaurant, I think, is a different experience. And I think if we can separate them out, and then we can learn not to drive the demand, and if the customer will pay for it as well, because they have to.
Sure.
Being hosted, it's an expensive business. You can go and have a £15 chicken burger that you've typed into an iPad to get, because no one had to take your order. But if you actually want lovely service and people who know what they're talking about and want to recommend the night for you, this is the wine to drink with that, this is the kind of food you want to eat tonight, what are you celebrating, what's this about, what do you like, that's a service.
Fascinating. And do you think that might loop through, ultimately, it sounds like it might, to better respect for people who work in hospitality and service as a career choice?
Absolutely. And that's what I'd hope for, because I think, again, mid-spend restaurants, the chain restaurants, kind of killed it for us a bit. Yes, there were loads of jobs, but it wasn't specialised. It was so, robotic. They're kind of like, well, let the robots do that. If that's what technology is going to do for us, let's let them do that. But let's let us specialise and then provide the personal service, if you like. So yes, that's what I'd hope for, and that's where I'd personally see myself going with it. Less more, in a way. Like, let's do less hours. Let's do this really well. Let's do not 100 covers tonight. Let's do 65 and do them really well.
And obviously that, I guess, involves for people like yourselves an element of bravery.
Yes, because you've got to push back a bit. Already when I'm going into this year, my thought was, right, I've got to be braver. I've got to try more, do less, and push this idea, because I believe in it, and I think it's the right way to go, because I want people to stay working, but they deserve a quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I get that. Yeah.
And that's, and it's not to say I'm lazy. Of course I'm not. I'll work as hard as the next person, but there's no point working 7 days a week and just being a busy fool. You want to be, let's make this the right experience.
And over those 32 years and the 15 years when what do you think have been the key landmark changes in the hospitality offering you've had to get involved with?
So, I mean, like I've already said, I think COVID was the biggest one for me. It really was. And I think it was the biggest one personally. It was also the biggest one across restaurants. I think it did do for a lot of chain restaurants. For whatever reason, chain restaurants are... It makes it sound like I think they're a bad thing. I started out in chain restaurants. They're brilliant. And there are some great chains out there still. The ones that are still going, they're the good ones. But it made it hard for them then to continue, I think. And I think it made... Why did I think because it's a reevaluation of what people wanted to do work-wise, you realise that you weren't going to get people to work 7 days a week, and you weren't going to be able to as so suddenly, and you thought, and because people have gone without, they were very happy with that. Well, they're only open 5 days. Well, that's fine because it's 5 days more than they were open. So it's kind of that it's been easier to come back and not go 7 days a week kind of thing. And I think
Sure.
that's been the massive landmark. And I think that was for us, and that's when we changed things. We thought, well, if we're only doing 5 days, we're going to have to stand apart from people who are charging only £15 or £20 a head, which is where we used to be at, much lower spend per head. And we need to make this a night out. Yeah, and again, it came down from social distancing. We set the restaurant up with only 50 people in it instead of 75, and we liked it. We liked how it felt. Would we have been brave enough to make that change without COVID? Probably not.
But your yield per table has to follow that track, doesn't it?
Exactly. So you have to make more off each table, which means you have to give them more. Which means you know, so that has been the biggest change for me. And I would say if people didn't change at that point, they probably got left behind, or I don't know, went out of business because you couldn't round people into a restaurant. No one wanted. There was no appetite to sit 100 people in a small space and charge them a lot of money and be in and out. People got more discerning in a way.
Sure. And you mentioned your start in life in hospitality, and I always ask my guests for the funniest thing they think that's happened to them in the hospitality industry, and most guests I'm sure could come up with a dozen things, but you had a particular incident early in your career with onion rings, I believe. Tell us about that.
Well, if any of my waitresses or serving staff hear this, or kids even, but because I laugh, obviously 45 odd years later, I see some waitresses and people laugh at what they do, but I was all of 15 at my first job, and they let me off the dishes and said I could carry out food. And I happily carried out the steak for the chef and put it down in front of the customer. He said, I didn't order onion rings. So I just left over, picked them up off the steak and walked back to the kitchen and said, they didn't order onion rings.
Ouch.
I was pilloried and told off so badly. I wept about it. And of course, now it's a horrific thought now. But yeah. I also used
How old were you then?
15.
Well, there you go.
Job, yeah.
Sorry, you also used to...
I used to get the orders wrong, and too many scampi and chips would go out onto the side, and then they'd still be there at the end of the day. So I used to go around the back and finish them off because I was scared to do it.
Oh, well.
Oh no, I've got it wrong. Somebody didn't get this.
Yeah.
So I'd eat it up.
I think that's called eating the evidence.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes, I did.
And you clearly, you mentioned about the staff and your interaction. You clearly have a lovely relationship, because I said to each of my guests, what's the one item you couldn't do without? And your staff, you said, take the mickey slightly out of your love for a certain kitchen implement.
Yeah, they do. I think there isn't a single member of staff that wouldn't have been able to answer this for you either. But yeah, it's the spatula. The humble spatula. It's not much, but oh my, it's like if ever I catch anyone emptying a bowl or a tub without a spatula in their hands, I just run around the back, pick up a spatula, put it down next to them and say, it works. I can do it without them. I have 4 of them at home and I have 6 at work, and they're...
I was going to ask you whether you had a particular one that no one else was allowed to touch.
I know they're all allowed to, because I encourage it. So
you're a big fan.
I have to make sure I've at least got 10 handy in case it can say, well, there isn't a spatula. Oh, there's always a spatula.
Got to be one.
Yeah.
So it could almost be the logo for the restaurant by the sound of things.
Yeah. Well, definitely in the kitchen they know it.
And what about you when you do? You obviously, hopefully, by the sounds of things, getting a little bit more downtime. But I'm sure even when you're not in the restaurant, you're on it. But when you dine out, where for you is a good place or great places that you really, really enjoy to go to? Because hearing it from hospitality professionals is the absolute, badge of honour for someone if you think it's good.
Yeah. Well, I think dining out might be one of my favourite things to do. I like travelling. I love dining out. You learn so much. And going up to London is a buzz because you get so many great ideas. So there's lots of places I love in London. Locally, I absolutely love going to Limps Manor. I love the view. I love the location. You feel a bit spoilt. It's a great place for a cream tea on a summer's day, or a G&T, just looking at that view. It's just a nice we celebrated my daughter's birthday there in the private room, and it's lovely. You just feel really spoiled. Equally, I love ambling down the road to the firehouse, having a pint of Devon Red and a pizza, and that's, to me, almost as good. I just love that kind of casual dining. They do it really well, and it's a great vibe there. So,
Yeah, and I think that's it. When someone says to me, "Where would you dine out?" you almost have to say to them, "Well, what are you looking for?" Because if you're looking to
absolutely,
get a
yeah.
bit
And then if you want interesting cooking in a lovely environment to take the family out, I just love Glebe House. I just think it's great. I love
right,
it. The cooking is exquisite. I like that you don't have to choose; you just get cooked a meal, and it's again what I love about a good restaurant. You feel hosted and looked after, not cooked at. I don't like being cooked too much. I hate this idea that there's like, come and demand my cooking. I kind of like the idea that when you go to Glebe House, so that the cooking is beautiful, but they're cooking a meal for you. You have the whole thing all the way through. There's a great starting drink, a nice starter, and it's beautifully done. And yeah, I love that.
yeah, that's very intriguing. Yeah, that notion of being cooked at, and
They
you
can
spoke
be,
about sort of sorry,
they can be a bit of being cooked at, can't they? Which
they
is,
can,
it's
yeah.
fun sometimes, and it's good to learn things. But I don't always want to be cooked at when I go. I don't want a new experience. I want a comfortable experience, or oh, that's exquisite, or it depends what you want. Like you say, it does depend what you want.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And you talked about, trends and future prospects in terms of how restaurants operate. Are there food trends you can see when you go out and enjoy meals yourself that might find their way to Harry's, or Harry's leading the way in making
Well,
sure
no,
that
I
certain
don't.
food
I
trends are
don't.
followed?
Do we lead? I don't think we necessarily lead the way, and I'm terrible because I know that there's no such thing as original thoughts. I do love going out to get different ideas. Um, but we kind of know who we are at the minute. We definitely sort of steakhouse, cocktail bar kind of vibe. So we know. I think we're comfortable with who we are. What do I think the trends are? I think there's going to be a lot more of as I said, the quick service restaurant, and they're going to get more interesting and more fun in a way. Smash burgers, the chicken burgers, pizza slices, and they'll be more interesting and better. I think the
The
quality.
sort of street foody vibe, but also
Yeah,
but within four
that's
walls almost.
that's going to do really well, I suspect. In other dining, I think it's a real. I don't know whether it's because I like it personally, and certainly you're seeing it in London. But I love the French bistro, and I think it's going to be quite a vibe, a kick back to that maybe. I think a French bistro does cover most tastes, and people are always looking for a kind of theme. So if they want a theme, I can see that the French bistro is having a bit of a revival.
Sure, and will that trickle its way through to some of your menus, you think? I mean, it already does, I guess, in
I think it
certain
does, yeah,
dishes.
because I like, but
Yeah,
I love French and Italian food, so and it's the basis of great cookery, isn't it? So
yeah,
you're always echoing or referencing it. You can't help it. So you know,
sure.
from an osso buco, which is Italian, or a chicken chasseur, which is going on next week, it's French Italian. That's where
Sure.
we're at, kind of, and that's
Find
great.
yourself
Yeah.
find yourself in that space. And
Yes.
and I think it leads on to a sort of final question in a way that you mentioned about your. I asked people, what's one thing we should know about your restaurant? You said, well, you said quite sharply in your note back to me, we are not a vegan restaurant. I thought, oh, something's coming back from experience there by the
Um,
sound of things.
I think it's again. I think from the point of view of a restaurateur, it's the consumer kind of. I understand there's a lot of dietaries out there, and we do our very best to cope with them. But I think you have a responsibility when you dine out to know where you're going approximately and what they can cater for. And I think it's hard to ask all restaurateurs, small independent ones, and we still classify, we are small and we are independent, to be all things to all men. And it's very hard to be that, which is why it's good if you can know who you are. If I happen to get some great history cabbage in and I'm able to do a great vegan dish that day, it's not to say I won't, or that I have anything against vegan as a thing. It's just not, it's not who we are, and it sometimes feels like some of the requests you get can be quite unreasonable, and you kind of think, well, if vegan's what you want, if you've got one or two choices, that's a great starting point in a steak restaurant.
Completely, yeah, and I guess you've got to find that balance. Yeah, I think
It'd be
sometimes
like me going to a fish restaurant and say, well, have you only got one meat dish? I'm like, oh,
yes,
it's a very
yes.
fine seafood restaurant.
I, I'm still scarred slightly about going to the Guinness Village once at Cheltenham races with a friend of mine who asked if they did Coca-Cola. In my wee small hours, sometimes being awake, I think back to that moment. I never let him forget about it. So I get that. I think
Yeah, it's
there's a middle ground, isn't there?
there is a middle ground. I'm not going to be hardline and say I'm never having vegans in the restaurant, and it's not like we don't try to. I'm just saying I think it has to work both ways. It'd be really nice if the consumer gave a little sometimes, but when they come in and say they're a vegan, dairy free, gluten intolerant, it's just like your heart sinks. You think, oh geez, I don't know where to go
Yeah.
with this.
No,
It can be hard to deal with, but so yes, not a vegan. It makes me sound intolerant. I try not to be, and of course we.
no, I don't think it did. I think these topics need exploring. I think sometimes the pendulum has swung too far the other way, and it makes it difficult for people.
It is. It's hard. It's you can't do everything. You can't satisfy every kind of criteria within the kitchen of making sure every area is allergen free when you have a limited amount of space. So you have to put your hands up and say, do you know what? I can't do that because
No.
it just wouldn't be right and proper because I can't. There's some things I can't put on the menu because I genuinely don't have the space to do it safely.
Sure, I get that.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And the same applies to dietaries. It's like, well, to satisfy that, I'd have to be all of these things, and I can't.
I haven't got the bandwidth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. It just,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to be allowed to have a limit as well,
Yeah. And it's obviously been a fantastic family enterprise down the generations. What's the state of play with the next generations? You mentioned your children. Are they involved? Are they keen? Will they be
There are
future?
two working full time with me at the moment. One definitely outgone now; she's sort of outgrown it. Is qualifying solicitor, and one very young, busy qualifying. So, who knows? Watch this space.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
if it stays in the family, but I'm never going to. It's been a tough life, but fun. I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily wish it on someone, but at the same time, I have really loved it, and I know they love it as well. So, and I don't think
Yeah.
I mean, my youngest is 21. She can't imagine a place where Harry's doesn't exist.
No, I mean, if it's been stitched through your entire life, that's understandable.
Exactly.
Well, Sam, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been a very insightful and wonderful sort of example of what goes on behind the scenes and the thought process. So I'm very grateful, and Godspeed, Harris, for the future.
Bless you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And once again, thanks so much to Sam for taking the time out to speak to me today. And now it's time for our whoop and whinge of the week, the time when we sit back and tell you about a couple of things we might have encountered on our dining out experiences of late, which pleased us and maybe didn't quite so much. So let's start with the good news, the whoop. Not so much dining out as dining in for myself, and actually not even dining but drinking with my whoop of the week. Love the guys at Sanford Orchards just outside Exeter. Their ciders are pretty legendary, and Barney, the chap who runs Sanford Orchards, I don't think there's any more sort of keen and happy in the world to promote the cider industry and all the joy that comes with that. Yeah, a half an hour with Barney talking about cider is half an hour well spent. And they've just produced their legendary Sanford Red. They've just produced in non-alcoholic version. And honestly, okay, you don't get the relaxation element of drinking a couple of bottles of their finest cider, but the rest of it is superb. It's a great zero option. Can't recommend it enough, and I think that gets my whoop of the week because I'm a big fan of Devon Red anyway, and I was thinking, well, the non-alcoholic version can't be a patch on that, but it is. It's a genius drink, and they've done very well to produce it in the way they have. And my whinge of the week, well, a bit of an ongoing thing. You sit down, you give the waiter or the waitress your order, two of you maybe choose something slightly different, and one of you is told, good choice. Well, to me, what does that say about the rest of the menu? I know they're trying to be friendly and engaging, and I think sometimes probably with this whinge of the week I could be accused of being an old curmudgeon, and frankly I'll plead guilty to that at times. But yeah, why would a member of the waiting team say good choice when you pick something from the menu. I rather hope everything on the menu is a good choice. I sort of get why they do it, but it does grind my gears slightly and makes me wonder about the rest of the items on the menu. I mean, if the chef's sending out the team properly briefed on everything that they've got on their menu, which I hope they are in decent establishments, then they ought to be fans of it all. So there's my whinge of the week. You can let me know if I've got it spectacularly right or spectacularly wrong along the way. But yeah, please let me know what your whoop and whinges of the week might be, and we'd be very happy to feature them here. So that's it for this episode of At My Table Southwest. I do hope you've enjoyed it. It was fascinating talking to Sam, and very much look forward to future episodes when we can bring you all the best in the news about the Southwest hospitality industry and the people who work in it. And we'd love to hear from you as well. If you want to get in touch with us with your recommendations, people or places we should feature, we'd love to hear from you. All you have to do is visit www.atmytablesouthwest.co.uk, or you can email us at mytablesouthwest@gmail.com. And I do hope we can hear from you down the line and give us some of your recommendations and ideas. But for now, I'm very grateful to you for listening, and goodbye.